Hello everybody and welcome to another quick Dwarf Fortress tutorial. In this video we're going to be talking about the labor system, and specifically the labor menu, as well as work details, standing order, kitchen, and stone use. I'll also be covering the tasks screen in this video. So the way the labor system works in Dwarf Fortress is a dwarf with the highest skill under the selected work detail will do the job. So if you have a set of miners, let's just say in this instance, 4 miners assigned to mining, the dwarf with the highest skill in mining will be the first one assigned to the detail. As other dwarves free up and acquire more available hands to go do those jobs, they will then move on and join in with those work details. So the highest skilled miner, in this case the expert miner, would be the first one in this screen to go start doing a mining job, whereas somebody like our adequate metal crafter here, Cog, would be less likely to take the first job. But if Cog is available and Zatan is not, Cog would go do the job first and then Zatan would join in shortly after. It's a very contortable system that confuses some people because there's a few quirks to it. First off, we have 3 different sections up here. We have everybody does this, only selected do this, and nobody does this. For the top 3 assigned jobs, miners, woodcutters, and hunting, specific equipment are required in order for these jobs to be completed. For miners, they require a pick. For woodcutting, they require an axe, a battle axe specifically. And for hunters, they require a quiver, a crossbow, and bolts. Now, if they don't have access to these items, these jobs can't be completed. So sometimes it might seem like, oh, nobody is hunting. Perhaps you simply have no bolts, or all of the bolts are forbidden. Or perhaps nobody's chopping down trees. Maybe all of your woodcutters are assigned to alternative tasks that they have much higher skills in, so they will prioritize those first. As we go down the list here, we now have the option for everybody does this. This just makes it into a general task where every single dwarf will do it first. But, of course, the first dwarf to go take this job would be Kib, because they are the proficient miner, or proficient planter, not miner. And if I select it to only selected does this, then we could be specific about who specifically we want to complete this task. Then there are some more nebulous tasks that are kind of hidden under the scenes, which are exposed via the custom work details options, which I'll be talking about in a second. We then later have fishing, which is assigned specifically like miners, hunters, and woodcutters, which can be customized a little bit in the standing orders screen. Plant gathering, which is for gathering farmed crops as well as items from the surface, by default is set to everybody does this. I currently have it turned off for this particular fortress as it's just my tutorial fortress where I explain things. And then lastly, we have stone cutting and engraving. Some of the hidden skills in this screen that are not surfaced in this menu are things like metal crafting. In fact, it's one of the most recommended ones to add in a custom work detail. Hauling is just kind of moving items about, and also keep in mind children separately do mining under the chores menu that can be found under chores. Did I say mining? I meant hauling. So children will do hauling under chores, but we'll talk about that in a second. Lastly, here we have orderlies, which is stitches, so giving dwarves stitches, tending to wounds, rescuing wounded and bringing wounded and sick, or alternatively imprisoned dwarves buckets of water so that they don't die of thirst and to have their wounds cleaned. Dwarves normally drink alcohol, but if they're injured or imprisoned, they are brought water for reasons. Underneath the custom work detail screen, we can add custom labor options. So if we want to be very granular about what dwarf and what type of dwarf can do what job, you can use this system alternatively. You can be very specific about healthcare, you can be very specific about butchering, you can get right down and add in a metalsmithing one. This is one that I will often add for myself if I have very specific dwarves I want to do metalsmithing, because that's one of the nebulous jobs that just kind of happens in the background. Same with gem cutting and a lot of the crafts. Because that's just one of those jobs that the game will automatically select dwarves that are available for, you may want to specialize even further. Now, there's a wrinkle with this whole UI setup outside of the work details and the custom work details. If I back out of this screen and select a dwarf, I can show you what I'm referring to. So if I jump over to, let's just say, Kosoth here, and I click on the labor screen, here I have a few more options that I can do. But it does break some things. So if I want this dwarf to stop mining, I can remove that. If I only want this dwarf to mine and maybe only mine and work with plants, I can remove this task and set these two to be the only tasks that this dwarf completes. However, the wrinkle here is when you do that, if you go back to this screen and then I select planting, It now says only selected do this, even if previously it was set to everybody does this. Because I've now specifically assigned one dwarf to that task, and the game assumes that for this labor, I want other dwarves to do that. I don't want other dwarves to do that task. I just want that one dwarf to do that task. So if you're going to be very specific, make sure you're specific for a lot of dwarves and not just assigning individual dwarves to do that task. Next, if I, say, make a metalworking custom detail down here, and I select all of the metalworking tasks, and we click done and call it metalwork. Then, if I select a dwarf down here and go to labor, it does show up down here. And because it's a specific new work detail, I can assign this dwarf to that and be very granular and specific about what dwarf I want doing what task. The next menu we're going to talk about in this video is the standing orders screen. Now, the standing orders screen is a very important menu that a lot of people miss. There's workshop automation. All of these are on by default, and it'll allow you to automatically weave thread in looms. So if there's thread available, thread will automatically be weaved. However, you can be more specific, and you can say no automatic weaving and only queue up jobs manually if you so desire. Same with dyed thread. If you're using dyeing, you can set it so that they only weave dyed thread after the thread has been dyed, which is a bit more complicated, but I generally just leave it on weave all thread. Same with cloth. We can tell our clothing workshops to only use dyed cloth for clothing, or we could just let them use any cloth. Down here is a very important one for when you're opening up cavern layers, because cavern layers are often full of spiders. Spiders tend to cause some problems for dwarves when like tripping over webs, and then all of the dwarves are bucking it out into the caverns to collect all the webs for the looms. If you have a lot of looms constructed, you might want to disable this when exploring caverns, just to stop your civilians from booking out there and dying. Slaughter any marked animal, meaning any animal that is available to be slaughtered will automatically be slaughtered unless you want that off. Automatic butcher carcasses, automatically clean fish, automate kitchen, automate tannery. You can turn all of these on and off granularly if you want. Under hauling, you can allow whether or not you want your dwarves to gather animals, food, furniture, bodies, minerals, and wood. I've definitely had some people ask me, why aren't my dwarves gathering insert thing here? And it's because they accidentally toggled it off in this screen. Very important to keep an eye on. Under here, we have refuse and hauling. If you're having problems with bodies being hauled from the surface, it might be because they are considered refuse. Bits and pieces scattered about and damaged and destroyed, you may want to enable gather refuse and vermin remains from outside. Down here, we can set whether or not they save or dumps shells or skulls, bones, shells, skins, and corpses and all that. Underneath sieges and forbidding, if you're having problems with your hunters not repicking up their ammunition, you may want to allow claimed used ammunition. I personally generally just leave this to forbid used ammunition during sieges, so that you don't have your civilians running out into a sieging force to go gather a bunch of bolts. I can always unforbid them later. Claim your dead, claim death items. The rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. Next, we're going to jump over to chores. Now, by default, children do chores, and children do all of the chores. Now, this can be very useful if you have a large population of children in your fortress. However, the issue is they have delicate little minds. And if dwarves are, hauling bodies to be buried and hauling refuse and skulls and bits and pieces of dead bodies, you might have some pretty scarred children. So if you want to keep your kids happy, I would be a little bit careful about what you let them do in this screen. Maybe you don't want them hauling animals outside past your corpse pile. Maybe you don't want them hauling water inside on a haunted biome. Maybe there's certain things that you want to keep away from your kids so that they stay sane. Maybe you don't want them cleaning because that's where the blood and vomit from old sieges is. Maybe you do want them doing those things so that they get desensitized, but you have to deal with some tantrums now and again. Just keep in mind, this is a good screen to keep an eye on. Kids can be very helpful in a pinch, but don't depend on them for everything, because your older, more hardened dwarves are generally going to be better at the task for some of these. Lastly, and under other, we can see how many job cancellations pop up here. We can also just completely mute job cancellations. Maybe you just don't care about like having jobs canceled and you know they're happening in the background, so it doesn't really matter to you. You can actually just mute these entirely. I often do that. Everybody harvests or only farmers harvest. If you set it to only farmers harvest, then you can be a little bit more granular with the work details screen. Now, the nice thing about only farmers harvest is they will gain skills in planting and get better yields. Down here we have mix similar foods in barrels or do not mix. If you want to be very specific about cooking and give and take stockpiles, you might want to set that. And then prefer zones for water drinking. You can set water zones. This is especially important for wells, or drink water from only designated zones. Very important if you have a well and you're underground and you don't want them going to the surface for any reason. Same with fishing. You can do specific designated zones for fishing, or they prefer zones for fishing. So if you have a zone and you only want them fishing there, definitely check that. Next, we're going to have a real quick peek at kitchen menu, which allows you to designate different types of things to be cooked or brewed. This is the cooking symbol. This is the brewing symbol. If you don't want something brewed, definitely deselect that. If you don't want something cooked, deselect that side. This can be very useful for getting rid of seeds that you're not going to be able to use. I've had some people ask me, what can I do with this kind of seed? Check your seeds menu. Maybe you can allow them to be cooked. There are plenty of seeds that many people will never actually do anything with in Dwarf Fortress. Probably a good idea to allow them as cooking ingredients, as dwarves like to eat them. Then under here for ale, is all your ale disappearing when you're cooking fancy meals? You might be using it as part of meals. By default, all ale is left on in the cooking drinks section. So just keep an eye on that, or keep it in mind. And then lastly, there's meat, fish, and others. I generally just leave those all on to be cooked. No problem there. Now, next thing is kind of an interesting one. This menu shows you whether or not certain material types are lava safe. If they have this little check mark here, it means that they are safe for lava. If they have the little X there, it means they will melt when lava hits them. Over here on the right side, you can see to use in non-economic jobs. So say, for example, you want to make something out of a particular type of stone and it's not letting you use it, check to see if it's forbidden or not forbidden here. By default, all of your other stone are available for constructions, whereas a lot of the economic stones are not. So if you would like to, say, use, I don't know, a certain type of item in non-economic jobs, you can allow and disallow in here. The last screen I'm going to talk about in this video is the tasks screen, which, as you can see, is empty right now. So let's queue up some tasks, and then we'll take a look. So now I have some tasks up here. I have a couple of Carpenter's Workshop tasks, as well as a rock altar, and I've also told my dwarves to go gather plants. If you, for some reason, need to cancel a whole bunch of orders, let's say you're getting attacked, you can pause, remove, set to repeat, and also jump to the location of and check the details of each individual task from the tasks screen. Every now and again, I see people saying, man, a bunch of jobs got canceled. I just want an easy way of unpausing all of them. They'll just show up as paused in here. Maybe a bunch of constructed floors that you wanted to unpause or that you want to unforbid that got canceled during construction. Well, you can unforbid all of those right here. You don't need to click on every single thing individually. Just simply jump to the task screen and you can forbid, unforbid, check details, check locations, as well as cancel task overall. Hopefully this video was a little bit helpful to you. This is something people have been asking me to do for a while, and I wasn't exactly sure how to present it, so I just kind of did the best I could. If you want to see more quick tutorials like this, you can check out this YouTube channel. I've got a very large playlist of them now. And if you would like to see me playing video games on the internet, you can find me at twitch.tv/BLINDIRL. Also, if you're watching this at the time that it's going live, in the description of this video is a link to a forum where you can send in a question to ask Tarn Adams on my stream on the 19th at 2 p.m. Pacific. Links in the description to my Twitch channel where you can find that, and also the Google form itself. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.